Right, third year, welcome to your source evaluation homework 1 about the countryside. So, what we're going to do is look at something similar to what you've been set, a task similar to you've been set for your homework. So, on your homework sheet, you will have a source. It will tell you who it's written by, the author. It will then have the information in here, and it will then have a question. So, Source A was written by a historian in 2006, and the source says, men such as Viscount Turnip Townsend became well known. They knew that scientific crop rotation would lead to fields being able to produce better crops. Townsend introduced a 4-year cycle of wheat, turnip, barley and clover rotation. Each crop replaced the goodness in the soil the previous one had taken out. And then our question, is source A useful for investigating changes to farming in the 19th century? And what we're going to look at, or how we're going to answer this, is just the same as you've been doing in class. So we'll be looking at CLAP, contemporary, content, limitation, authorship, accuracy and purpose. Okay, so first off, contemporary. Now what you might want to do here is maybe pause the video and then you have a go. You see if you can answer whether or not it's contemporary. Then once you're ready, start it again and the correct answer will be revealed. So if it's is it contemporary or not? First of all, we're looking for when the source was written. So it was written in 2006. Then we're looking to the question. When is the question, or what time period is the question looking to investigate, or is asking us to investigate? It's asking us to investigate the 19th century. We know that the source was written a long time after that. So, the source is not contemporary, as it was written in 2006, a long time after the 19th century. Next up, content. What does the source actually talk about in relation to the question? So the question is about investigating changes to farming in the 19th century. The source talks about the introduction of scientific crop rotation. So therefore our content is useful because it tells us about scientific changes in farming. Next up, a limitation of the source. What is the source missing out, or is there a bias in the source? There's perhaps not going to be a bias because it's written by a historian, so maybe it misses something out. What does the question ask? Is it useful for investigating changes to farming in the 19th century? Well, it gives us one change, but it doesn't give us other changes. So, the limitation of the source is that it only talks about scientific changes and doesn't mention other changes such as the introduction of enclosures. Authorship. Who has written the source? Well, it tells us up here it was written by an historian in 2006. So, the author is an historian who is an expert, which makes the source useful. Next up, accuracy. Is, from what you know, from your own knowledge, the source accurate? In other words, do you know that Vincent Turnip Townsend introduced scientific crop rotation and that this change led to more crops or better yield of crops? Yes, you do. So the source is accurate because I know from my own knowledge that scientific crop rotation did change farming in the 19th century. See, each time we're relating what's said in the source to the actual question. So we're talking about scientific crop rotation and changes to farming in the 19th century. Next up, what's the purpose of the source? Well, it's written by an historian. So the purpose of the source is to inform students, or could be anyone, of scientific changes towards crop rotation in the 19th century. So there we've covered our contemporary, our content, our limitation, our authorship, our accuracy and our purpose. We want to round it off by relating it to the question. In other words, we have written the source is not contemporary as it was written in 2006, a long time after the 19th century. However, the content is useful because it tells us about scientific changes in farming. A limitation of the source is that it only talks about scientific changes and doesn't mention other changes such as enclosures. The author is an historian who is expert, which makes the source useful. The source is accurate because from my own knowledge I know that scientific crop rotation did change from the 19th century, and the purpose of this source is to inform students of scientific changes towards crop rotation in the 19th century. You would then round this off by saying, therefore, source A is useful for investigating changes to farming in the 19th century. And it's quite important that you put that in. Simply stating about whether it's contemporary or not content limitation and not relating it to the question, it will lose you marks. So make sure at the end of all that you've put, therefore, source A is useful, or if you don't believe it's useful, is not useful for investigating changes to farm in the 19th century. So I hope that helps. If it doesn't, or if you're still confused, have a shot at it and then come and see me before next Tuesday. Okay, good luck.